Hello and welcome to The Agenda with me, Graham Hughes, and I'm joined, as always, by the delectable Phil Moorhouse of A Different Bias. How you doing, Phil? You alright?
I'm all right, thank you. Yes.
Doing better than Starmer?
Eh,
Oh my word. So there's some polling out today from
yes.
YouGov. It came out at
Yeah.
8:50 this morning. It was posted on Blue Sky. Keir Starmer's net favourability rating has dropped 12 points in a month
Yeah.
to minus 46, his lowest level ever. And it includes a whopping 34-point drop amongst Labour voters. I can't stress this enough. Ed Davey is now a more popular leader amongst Labour voters than
Yeah.
Keir Starmer. Phil, explain.
The unpopularity is really obvious. I mean, you don't want to correlations, not causation, everything. But at the end of the day, a prime minister's popularity is based on what people are thinking about when they think about the government, and all they've been getting from the government recently has been all the stuff that, like, they're doing exactly what the Conservatives tried to do. Oh, Reform UK are on the rise. Right, what should we do? I know. Let's try and be more like them because that's obviously popular. And actually, that reduced their popularity because the people who find that sort of rhetoric popular were already supporting Reform UK, and Reform UK are the real deal on that. So, and Labour are now trying the same thing, which makes no sense. Now, just from a strategy point of view. So if you think about policies, so what's been going on in recent terms, they've flipped policies on trans issues. See, They had no chance of gaining any votes from their trans position because people voted for them. It was in their manifesto. They were going to be boosting trans rights.
Yep.
So people factored that in, even if they themselves were not in favour of more trans rights. They priced it into their vote.
Yes.
So the problem with Labour doing this is they're not impressing anyone, but they are pissing some people off, and that's just one little issue. Obviously,
it looks like constant U-turns. It looks like mixed messages.
Also just from a strategy point of view. So you have policies. You can break it into this particular point into like four types of policies. So some policies are high impact. Those are ones that people are going to notice, like without you having to say anything. Low impact ones that people will never notice unless you point it out. And then you can also say some policies are in terms of obviously different people will disagree on different policies, but from Labour's point of view, there are certain policies that they think are useful policies, like, improving workers' rights and improving water quality. And there are some policies that are deemed harmful, such as artificially restricting immigration to the point where it hurts your economy, things like that. Now, there are some policies you will pursue. In fact, I just stick up a little thing. I prepared a thing anyway, and I made sure it had margins. Look, margins. So you can think about, you could put policies into four brackets: high impact and useful, low impact and useful, high impact harmful, low impact harmful. Now, you obviously, something like what Labour are trying to do with their social policies recently, these are low impact as far as Labour are concerned. As far as Labour are concerned, these are low impact harmful. They're not going to do anything like all the immigration stuff. What can it do? Are Labour's immigration policies going to stop the boats? No, they've said they expect the boats to carry on. Is it going to stop migrants using hotels? No, them clearing the backlog is going to do that. So none of their recently announced immigration policies are going to have any major impact that people will notice. So in Labour's terms, it's economically harmful. But what? Yes, that's an improvement. Right, anyway. So why would you ever apply any policies that are harmful for political purposes? You may do it to get votes because you also have to get votes to win elections, and not everyone will necessarily benefit or feel they're benefiting from your high impact useful ones or the low impact useful policies that you are communicating to them, which Labour are not at all. So why would you pursue harmful to get votes? So therefore, if you're pursuing these policies because you think you need to for electoral strategy, you should at least see an improvement in the polls. Now, what I genuinely don't understand, because when Labour do things that I mean, you know, any Labour, it doesn't matter, any Labour leadership, 80% of what they do, I don't agree with anyway. It doesn't matter. I don't expect them to. But I can usually work out some sort of logic that might apply. Sometimes I'm certain of it because I've heard things like reported from those who are making the decision. Some things I'm just guessing, but you can spec. In this case, I can't, because they're, you know, these are low impact, harmful policies that they're announcing. They've been announcing over the last few weeks. And yet the polling has gone completely the opposite direction. And yet they're still not stopping it.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Well,
I actually, on this case, do not get it, because they're getting the opposite results of what they want.
Yeah.
It's like they're doing something. These policies that they've been announcing of late have zero impact. They cannot possibly change, and they don't want it to change anything. It has zero impact, apart from for a small number of people for whom the impact is negative. And yet it's not even working for them in the polls.
Yes, 65% of Britons now have an unfavourable view of Labour, according to this YouGov poll. The most since YouGov began asking the question in June 2017. So the more Labour under Starmer right now are more unpopular than they were under Corbyn in December 2019.
No. Unless you said that wrong, he was never in government.
No, leader. The dislike.
Oh, so you're not saying in government?
No. It's
sorry.
65% of Britons have an unfavourable view of Labour, not the government.
Labour specifically. Okay.
Labour specifically. So now Starmer is more unpopular than Corbyn was at the height of Corbyn's unpopularity.
He's not. That's Labour, which is still bad. In fact, it's arguably worse. Jeremy Corbyn's unfavourability went way lower than Starmer's is even at the moment.
Personal but we're talking about the party.
Labour, which arguably is worse.
Yes.
Because people can vote for they vote for the leader.
Yeah.
But it's actually worse.
It's really, really bad.
And the thing is, he should be looking at this and saying, whoever's been and we know actually who's been advising him, but the people who've been some expletive deleted called Rutherford, and of course McSweeney. I mean,
who's the Rutherford person? I've not heard of him. I'll have to put him down. I'm going to add him to the list, mate.
You have heard of him. Is policy exchange guy.
Oh dear.
Which is basically Tory think tank. In fact, it's a think tank that has also done no favours to the Tories. It's like the people who came up with the Tories' most unpopular policies.
Yeah.
And Labour have gone, that's the guy to rescue our poll rating. That's who we want to advise us. He's in charge of providing this narrative.
Yeah, we've got in the chat, we've got Chris C. Thank you very much for the super chat, my friend. Labour needs to sack their advisors ASAP. Couldn't agree more.
Absolutely do.
Yeah, my mum's in the chat as well. Hi, mum, so don't swear. We've got Alex French in there. We've got Oliver Brown. We've got Chris C. We've got David Smith, Alex French, Billy Kershaw. We've got Ori in the chat as well. If you'd like to join our friends in the chat there, all you need to do is hit the subscribe button, wait for 1 minute, and you'll be able to opine openly. Well, not that openly, because if you're a bigot, we will mute you and boot you. Chris C is saying Starmer's really unpopular at the public. And Chris H is saying Labour need a massive shake-up. Most of his cabinet must go, himself included.
No, that's nonsense. In fact, there is going to be a reshuffle. There probably shouldn't be at all. I gather.
Someone was saying earlier that Starmer might be out by June, or the way things are going. I mean,
no. The one thing we know from him over the past few years is he is ruthless. He's not going to allow this to happen. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the next thing he shakes up changes it for the better. It's one thing to recognise, because he won't double down on it. He's got a history of not doing that. But he may make the wrong changes. It's not the cabinet. And if there's any thinking inside Downing Street that, this is the problem of useless cabinet ministers, that's absolute crap. Not a single there are some, we know that there are a couple going anyway, one of whom I agree with, the other one I don't. But none of this is the fault of anyone in cabinet, apart from obviously the Prime Minister has to take responsibility. This is the fault of the fact, if you think about what they're doing that's going to be popular, It's stuff like that, what they're doing, like Steve Reed's doing with the water industry, what Angela Rayner's doing with housing, what Ed Miliband's doing with energy, what Rachel Reed's doing with the economy. Even, you've got workers' rights bill coming through. Yeah, all of these things are popular, but they're not building that into their narrative. Their narrative is basically we can be as shitty as Reform UK. But that's no.
We can
That's
be as
not why
horrible.
people are voting for Reform UK either. That is not why and they must know this.
We've got a
Because the
super
thing
chat
is,
come in. Hang on a second before you go on about reform not being that popular. Isabella, thank you so much for the £10 super chat saying think tanks have taken over politics. Yeah, there was a
they
dig
should if
that
they're
Kemi
good.
Badenoch gave Keir Starmer this week at PMQs, where he said, well, you're too focused on your focus groups or something like that. And it's not necessarily focus groups, it's think tanks, these mysteriously thundered think tanks that have their people in Parliament every day dripping poison into the ears of politicians of all stripes.
Do you know what I think it is? It's because no one understands maths. I've said this before. Almost nobody in politics understands maths. So their advisors are making their arguments empirically. And two people can sit down and set the world to rights over a pint easily, and it'll all make sense. As long as it makes sense to the people they're convincing, then all of a sudden, oh yeah, that's absolutely the way to do it. Like, we could do it here. We could be saying things that are absolute claptrap. But you shouldn't be running your political strategy like that. You should have cold, hard data, and they should have senior people who understand the data. The problem I always have in politics, almost nobody in politics. And the thing is, like, you'll get these same people who, if you talk about like arithmetic, oh, I'm crap at arithmetic. So that's something like you learn when you're in junior school. So you're admitting you're crap at maths that you learn in junior school, yet you think you can interpret polling, which is something you don't do properly until you go to university, if you ever study it. And that's my problem. They need to employ, you obviously can't expect everyone in politics or even in like advice teams to come from a maths background, but they need someone there who is their maths person. And they don't have any. They don't have them. They don't come from that background. They keep appointing people who come from the same backgrounds as they do.
Phil, if they did PPE, surely the E stands for economics. Surely they must be able to add things together.
No, there's no maths.
So is economics? I have a low opinion of economists. I really do. I think they're people who claim to be able to know which horses are going to win the Grand National. I'm like, it's just a case of looking at, what seems to be doing well, what seems to be doing, whether pork bellies are going to sell this week because there's a big pork belly fiesta on somewhere down in Monterey. Do you know what I mean? Like, I see it as reading tea leaves. Tell me I'm wrong.
No,
explain to me why I'm wrong. You have to tell me.
So, I mean, first of all, obviously, the reason why economic models can never be as accurate as, say, weather forecasts, and obviously, even with a weather forecast, the further out you do it, the more ridiculous it is. I mean, you can't expect an economist to predict what the economy is going to be like in 5 years' time, which is the whole basis of a budget. But that is because the economy is affected by politicians.
Yes.
You cannot predict what an idiot politician. You can predict how people will behave according to economic policy, but you cannot predict what the economic policy is going to be next week. But the economists themselves, the decent ones, they still have to come up with some sort of model, and it does require them to really know their stuff. But the people who study it as like people who the MPs who've studied PPE, no offense to them, but the people who've studied PPE, you learn economics as in the same way that I learnt about mental health issues as a teacher. I'm not an expert in mental health issues. I just had to learn about it to recognise some signs in students who I would then refer to someone else. It doesn't make me an expert.
People who have a degree in economics that don't really know about economics.
Again, some will, some won't.
That seems a bit shit, because I did politics and history, and I feel like at least I knew a little bit when I left. Probably not as... I learnt more by travelling, to be honest with you.
The other thing is, you can, like, economics...
way more by travelling.
Because economics is fundamentally political, like, you can have an economic theory until it's actually tested out. You can't really say whether it'll work or not. So you might have learnt something about economics that at the time hadn't been disproven and now has.
We got a couple of super chats in. We got Brad W. Thank you very much for the £5 super chat. None of this would be happening if McSweeney didn't obtain a sex tape of Starmer to blackmail him with.
I strongly suspect such a thing does not exist. I know we thought John Major was really boring and he was like grey
and he was having it away with Rena Curry.
Yeah. I really don't see Starmer in that.
Questionable Absanity, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. I agree with Phil regarding maths. I see mathematical illiteracy all over politics, and frankly, the general population are mathematically vacant. I mean, it's not a nice thing to say.
It's not just that they're bad at maths. It's that they don't realise. Like, they know they're bad at arithmetic, which is easy.
Gone up by 10%, Phil. Cammy Badenoch said it at Prime Minister's Questions. 10%, Phil. It went up from 4.4 to 4.5, and that was a 10% increase.
Yeah.
Help me out
here. She's an engineer, but she is also a liar, so, you know.
You're a physicist.
She's also the one who said, you destroyed Beals, who went into administration 5 years ago.
Yes. We were talking about this on this live stream on Wednesday. We talked about this as it was happening. And I'm like, you know, why am I fact-checking these people? Why aren't the people like the BBC going, yes, that was a lie that just came in from Kemi Bannon. Yeah. Christy, thank you very much for the £5 super chat, mate. My opinion is Starmer, Reeves, Kendall and Streeting don't believe in Labour's core values. If they did, they wouldn't be so cruel towards the poor. I thank you very much for the super chat, Chris. And you know, I feel similar. Like, why are they doing this? This seems to go against everything Labour stands for.
So it's not at all. I am going to have to counter that one at least. It's absolutely not. Right. So I'll go for it. First of all, they're not being cruel to the poor at all. I know, obviously, that some people, you know, people who are in need of disability payments are suffering from it. Yes, but literally every other poor person has had their incomes boosted.
Yeah, but we're talking. If we're talking about disabled people, they're freaking out now because Labour's mixed messaging on what's going to happen with PIP.
But
it looks like there might be over 100 MPs rebelling against that as well.
If 100 voted against it, the policy will not happen. It's really that simple.
Yes,
because the government will lose.
Yes,
that's what
I
need.
Put disabled people through the stress,
of
thinking that the PIP might stop.
That's not the point I was trying to make on that point. I'm not arguing that there's anything that's okay with that. What I'm saying is it's not a core Labour value either. We have this idea about core Labour values being socially progressive, literally because of, ironically, Tony Blair. Before Tony Blair, Labour were never a socially progressive party. There have been, so don't get me wrong, there have been some.
They were.
What?
1967. They brought in.
Decriminalised
homosexuality.
Yeah. But also, what about the Commonwealth Act? Same government, Harold Wilson. Incredibly racist.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons why we went into the arms of the European Economic Community in 1973 was racism, because we wanted to stop people from the Commonwealth coming here and having a good excuse to do it, which was, we can't have people from the Commonwealth coming here because we're working with our European brothers and sisters now.
Yeah. But nonetheless, like, past Labour governments have not been socially progressive. Like, you get the odd thing under the Conservatives. But like, the last Labour government were very socially progressive.
Yeah,
you could list as long as your arm of things they were doing.
Yeah.
So it's not the core Labour value is literally what they were formed for, which is boosting workers' rights. Anything beyond that is not a core Labour value. We have recently become used to it.
That's what I thought I was voting for at Labour, and that's what I thought. I thought I was in a socially progressive party from when I joined as a kid, like after the 97 election. I thought I was in a socially progressive party, especially compared with the Tories.
Yes, but that was for all the criticism he gets, Tony Blair.
From my experience, the last 46 years with Labour in opposition or in power, they've been, I've thought, a socially progressive party that are pushing for things like gender equality, marriage equality, helping people out, and helping out the poor. I mean,
helping out the poor is the economic policy.
They get hauled over the coals all the time for giving out handouts and for having this Britain that Labour isn't working and they just want to give people the dole to sit on their arse. And they've been hammered like that all my life. So I don't know any difference. I don't know this time, before I was born when Labour were more horrible than they are now.
that Labour isn't working you reference from the 1970s had nothing to do with benefits. That was entirely about workers, giving workers more rights. That's what Labour has always been, giving workers more rights.
Clupid Boroscope is saying quite rightly, I think, in the chat, isn't the core Labour value supporting the working class? And that's why they got so much support from the working class from urban areas, especially. Maybe not rural areas.
Yeah, it's supporting the working class, but the working classes are not all socially progressive. I'm not defending these positions, by the way. Labour should be socially progressive. What I'm saying is it's not a core Labour value to be socially progressive. It's a recent thing. And it went away immediately.
40 odd years isn't like...
But it hasn't been 40 odd years. It wasn't 40 odd years.
They seemed pretty progressive under Kinnock, and then they were progressive under John Smith. And
what policies under Kinnock were progressive? Socially progressive.
Doing away with the poll tax, which was a regressive tax.
But that's an economic policy. Tax is an economic policy.
Oh, I don't know. I should probably go back and read the 1992 election manifesto of Labour's, but they lost. One of the reasons they lost, by the way, which we don't really talk about that much, is because people saw what happened with Militant in Liverpool, with Derek Hatton and his little cronies. And I'm kind of hoping that the same thing will happen with Refuck here in Durham. They'll make such a pig's ear of it. And we can go, this is what happens when they're put in charge of a county. Can you imagine what it'll look like when they're put in charge of a country?
The thing is, so there were 3 people at Durham County Council that were up for the leadership. Darren Grimes, who's going to be the deputy, a former Conservative who was an experienced councillor, and some business guy, and they've given it to the business guy.
The failed business guy.
Well, that's irrelevant. It's nonetheless somebody who's got no experience of running public services or being in
he's
local
had
government.
Experience of running a pub into the ground. He's literally someone who can't organise a piss up in a brewery.
Okay, I don't know about that, but it doesn't matter. It makes no difference. He could be a really successful business owner. It makes no difference. It's not going to help him run a council.
No.
So of the 3 people that were up for the leadership, the one with experience in a council is not even the deputy. And that's going to be the case all across Reform UK's councils. They're not going to be run by people who know how to run it.
Yeah.
And actually, I'll tell you something else.
They've already messed things up, Phil, with the whole... when Tice said they're not going to allow any solar panels or wind turbines in Lincolnshire, councillors are supposed to regard every planning permission, every planning application has to be regarded on its own merits. And you're not supposed to go in there with a predetermined outcome for that thing. Now, him putting out that tweet means that anyone in Lincolnshire who wants to put solar panels on their farmland should put the application in now, because even though the council is like to say, no, we're not doing that, they'll take it to appeal, take it to a court, and the court will say, yes, you are doing that, because it's your land, you can do what the fuck you want. And they went into that meeting and had that vote with pre-made ideas in their head. Yeah. And we got the proof because we got Richard Tice's fucking tweet.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, go on. Sorry.
But they haven't got any policies.
The soul of Labour.
Oh, sorry. We're back onto Labour. I was just going to say, Reform UK don't even have any local government policies.
No.
But it actually makes no difference they're incompetent because they've got any policies anyway.
They've got to stop woke.
Yeah, but that's not a local government policy, is it?
They're going to get rid of DEI.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. We have equal opportunities in this country. They're using American terms. It doesn't exist here.
Yeah, I know.
And equal opportunities is national, it's not local councils.
Anyway, the soul of Labour. We've all been duped. I thought they were socially...
Well, we have, actually. I mean, that's actually the point I made earlier on when I was saying that Labour MP... Because I am someone who's vocally against rebelling against... Like, if you don't want to vote with your party leadership, don't stand under the party's banner. Go and piss off and be an independent. However, I do expect MPs to vote against their leadership or to threaten to if the leadership is breaking their own promises. And it's really clear. Nobody who voted Labour or voted against Labour, nobody voting in last year's election, if you'd have said to them, whether they like Labour or not, whether they were holding their nose to vote for Labour or whether they were voting for someone else, none of them would have thought, oh yeah, Labour will shit on trans rights, screw over disabled people and demonise immigrants. Yes. None of them would have thought that, and you wouldn't have thought that reading the manifesto. So this is actually a breach. in some cases, in at least one case, I would say of the letter of the manifesto, but in all cases is a breach of the spirit of the manifesto, because it is like you've given people a false impression.
Yeah.
And just like Conservative MPs who stood aside and allowed their leaderships to screw over the party with both Brexit and with refusing to deal with asylum properly, both of those things created Reform UK.
Yeah.
Reform UK would not exist without those things.
Yeah.
Because they stood aside and allowed their leadership to do something that they knew was a stupid idea, their party is now facing literal oblivion.
Yeah.
It may not die out, but it could. It could genuinely die out now.
So,
Labour MPs should learn from that.
By being these people who, don't like disabled people, don't like trans people, don't like foreign people, their popularity, Keir Starmer's personal popularity has gone through the roof with Reform voters. No, it hasn't. It's gone from 4% to 2% in the last month.
Yeah, of course. It's
gone down.
This is my problem. If they had anyone in their team who was involved in senior level meetings with the Prime Minister and Morgan McSweeney, if they had anyone who actually understood maths, they would be saying, this is doing the opposite of what you want it to do. We need to stop right now, because it will be much better now to turn. They don't have to. You can actually slowly nudge yourself back to calmer waters. But it would be better to turn around and say, do you know what? We've been completely mischaracterized here. Try and argue black is white. Let me be clear about our positions. It's not this, and just change it all back, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
That would be better than carrying on down the wrong road.
Yeah.
Because it's clearly the wrong road. It would be different. Like the party losing popularity because, and this is what it used to be when they first started losing that popularity, like late last summer, that was, the riots didn't help, but that was mostly because people were talking about this change and then the change wasn't coming, and then Labour kept talking about how shit the economy was. It's like, and now they're trying to back out of, this highest growth of the GDP type thing. So that's what started the rot. It was simply that Labour weren't communicating all the things they were going to improve. So they were thinking, hang on a minute, have we just voted for more of the same here? That's different. You can turn that around with your delivery. It doesn't matter that your delivery might be a year or two later. You can turn it around. But if you're saying things that are unpopular, you can't turn that around until you stop.
Yeah. We got a super chat come in from Kat. Thank you so much. I know for a fact life improved under Labour last time. They were in power. I saw and felt my living standards go from fairly grim to much better. Same here, Kat. I mean, not to that extent, but I saw things getting better in Liverpool under Labour, and ironically, a Lib Dem council, by the way. But yeah, the Labour Party under Starmer now, it has been a huge disappointment. I'm just looking at the figures. They're eye-wateringly bad. This is just in the space of a month. 1 month. The favourability rating amongst Labour voters, not Reform, not the Tories, not Lib Dems, not Greens, Labour voters went down from 62% to 45% in 4 weeks. That is insane. That is a drop off a cliff. If that is not ringing very, very loud alarm bells at Labour HQ, I don't know what it will take, because the popularity's gone down with Reform voters.
Yeah, it's not worked anyway.
The popularity of bloody Farage amongst Labour voters has gone up.
The thing is, nationally, they haven't lost that many votes to Reform UK. Now, that's not to say it's not an issue, because they have lost a lot in some of those key areas. Cause they don't care about who they're going to vote for in a place where they'll vote Lib Dem anyway. But the fact that they're not even winning support, it wouldn't matter anyway. If they're losing more support than they're gaining, you still stop it. But they're not even winning support from the people who went to Reform UK. It's mental.
So Keir Starmer's net favourability rating amongst all Britons is minus 46. Do you hate Farage? His is minus 27.
Yeah.
Kemi Badenoch's is minus 39. So Starmer is the most unpopular leader right now.
And
people prefer
the thing
Kemi
well,
Badenoch, who is demonstrably shit
awesome.
at her job. People prefer her.
She's just called the Welsh members of the Welsh Parliament Scottish MPs. That was hilarious. So, yeah, she's it should be emergency stations. Like, you can't even say, there was a time last autumn where the news that was coming out is they were fine, they were comfortable because they knew the unpopularity was just due to the lack of delivery. But of course, the delivery takes time. Once people see that, it'll be fine. And I could go with that. I could absolutely fine. The fact that they're doing all this stuff recently means that they are panicking. So they are no longer comfortable with their poll rating. Yeah. And yet, because of what they've done,
they're making it worse.
Poll rating. And what I would do...
Trying to put out a fire by pouring gasoline on the fire. Well, that's exactly what they're doing.
Well, the thing is, what they've done, if you want to follow that analogy, they've put it out with gasoline, but the tank was labelled water. So they didn't intend to. They've done it accidentally.
I'm kind of... Chris in the chat is saying this is more than bad communications from Labour. I honestly think the Cabinet has some serious sadists. Like, I can't... Looking at what Wes Streeting is doing to trans people, I can't disagree with that.
No, it's entirely... Well, I don't know about any individual because I don't know them. But in general, the Cabinet are not in favour of this. They are going along with it because they are told that it's strategically necessary. What I would urge, not just Cabinet members, but all Labour MPs to do, is to look at the polling and go, this is not working. Yeah. Because if you're going to announce... Right, I can't put it any simpler than this. Starmer has announced things in the past few weeks. Like, he's just announced things. He hasn't done anything. Like, the things he has done are not what the cause of this are, but he's announced things, and he's announced them to great fanfare because he wanted an instant impact. He wanted the public to go, oh, great, yeah. So the proof of whether that's successful is, does the polling improve? The polling has got worse. Yeah. So what Labour MPs and Cabinet ministers need to be screaming at Starmer is, the people you've got advising you are killing us.
Yeah.
Because Labour will still probably win the next election because all those other things they're doing, they will. They are still going to produce those benefits which actually matter most to people.
I think
but the stuff they're doing right now is doing the opposite. So it's still going to cost them seats.
I think you're that whole thing of, like, if people understood mathematics better, then, you know, the society would be a better place. People don't vote on their own circumstances to that extent.
They do.
Okay, they'll blame the government when things go wrong, but they won't credit the government when things go right. They've done that off their own back, Phil. You know how people behave. They're like, I deserve this. That pay rise that I got, that another person didn't get, I deserve it. No one's going to say, oh, I got a pay rise because the governments are great.
Graham, they deserved the pay rise 2 years ago and they didn't get it. They do recognise that a government, it doesn't matter that they think they deserve it, they still recognise that the government provided the conditions for it. And the public has never, ever, ever voted out a government where the economy was doing well. Ever. It's never happened in British history. Because people do not vote out a government for a wild card. They will only do it if they think, they first of all have to think that the government has demonstrably failed. My problem with what they're doing at the moment is it doesn't matter what the net impact is at the next election. The net impact of what they're doing right now is negative to them, and it's provably negative to them.
But how did the Tories? Terrible. Well, the Tories won 2010, 2015, 2017, 2019. They won 4 elections on the trot, and our economy was in the fucking doldrums the whole time. It didn't grow more than 3.0 trillion dollars.
People don't feel that.
No, I felt the price of a pint doubling.
No, people didn't, because it didn't double over that period of time. Like, over a long period of time, but it didn't double in like a year like it did in the last Parliament.
Well, I mean,
people didn't
look
think
at
the economy was doing badly.
Psychology behind it rather than the sensible thing. What you think?
Also, you've got to think about those elections as well. So, 2015, the Conservatives, right? They didn't win. The Lib Dems vote collapsed. The Conservatives got basically the same number of votes as they did in 2010. They just got more seats because the Lib Dem vote collapsed. So basically, Lib Dem voters punished the Lib Dems more than Conservative voters punished the Conservatives. 2017 and 2019 were about Brexit. So that's why, I'm going to have another thing. Where's it? I've got it somewhere. I keep it. I always keep it.
Okay, while you look at that.
No, I've done it. That is why this downward trend, this is Tory plus Labour share combined, it shows the fragmentation of the vote. That's why there was that spike in 2017 and then to a lesser extent 2019, because those elections were not about the normal things, they were about Brexit. So the first election, so basically 2010, the Conservatives gained a load of seats because the economy was doing badly and people blamed Labour. In 2015, the Conservatives didn't really gain at all. The Lib Dems just lost and they were in second place in those seats, so they just won a load of extra seats. 2017 was about Brexit. 2019 was about Brexit.
Okay.
So the first election that the Conservatives went into...
The 2029 election might not be about the economy. Something else might come up.
It could be.
It could be. World War III with bloody dickheads, what's his name, Putin and Trump.
It could well be another... But then if that happens, then it'll be quite interesting, because what happens is if an election is all of a sudden fought on a single issue, then the vote doesn't fragment anymore, it polarizes.
Yes.
So the Lib Dems and the Greens
say that, it's going to be the European Court of Human Rights. And the Tories are going to team up to try and take us out.
No, that'll never. They are, but that will never be the defining issue.
You might have thought that about leaving the EU if we were having this conversation in 2011. When no one gave a fuck about
leaving the EU could easily be a election defining issue, because that's massive. People understand that that's massive. They don't understand the ECHR.
People didn't understand about. I mean, not all.
Yeah, but they understood it was a big part of their lives.
The most Google thing after the referendum was, "What is the European Union?"
Yeah, but people still knew it was a big part of their lives.
Talking to people who thought that the life wouldn't change when we left the EU and we'd be just as good, we'll be better off than where
people voted against it because they thought it was.
And if people are told that all the problems in their life are now caused by, Joe, it used to be the EU, and then it was trans people, and then it was migrants, but now it's the European Court of Human Rights.
Yeah, it won't be. You can wait and see if you like, but it won't be.
Chris C, thank you very much.
It's too obscure.
Thank you very much for the super chat. £2 super chat. Well, the cabinet needs to stand up to Starmer. Exactly. Storm Streeter gives a £5 super chat. Could the advisor be giving bad advice deliberately? Yeah, I think so. He's either an idiot or a plant.
I suspect not, but when they were joking, the Lib Dems were joking that their sleeper agent Liz Truss had been turned on. Yeah. That was a joke. I mean, it's possible.
And then, we got Bad Bones 777. Thank you very much for the £2 super chat. Assuming good faith, how do advisors see this working? I don't know. But just to go back to the point about the European Court of Human Rights and it not being an issue at the moment for most people, the EU wasn't an issue for anyone in 2010. In the polls in 2010. They asked them what were the 5 most important things that people cared about, and the EU was just so far down on the list.
It doesn't matter. That doesn't mean to say people didn't think it was part of their lives. You could say the same about pavements. If you put pavements in that list, it would be so far down the list as well, because people just accepted it was there. It doesn't mean people didn't think it was a big part of their life. Just that.
But the media can make it a big part of. 10 years ago, no one was talking about trans people using the wrong bathroom. No one was talking about that. That's completely created by the media, by the billionaires, by the oligarchs, by the tyrants who run this fucking planet.
Yeah, you're just proving my point, because it's still not a voting issue. Because it's not a voting issue. No, it's not. No one's going to use that apart from actually.
It was one of the first things Trump did when he got into power.
Yeah, but
it's one of his
sticks
he used to beat up the Democrats with. Oh, they want to trans the kids. The kids go into school and they come back a different gender.
Graham, he didn't get any votes from it. He didn't get any votes from it.
He won.
If he hadn't have said anything about trans issues, his vote would have been the same.
Do you reckon?
Exactly the same. And I know for a fact from polling, it's one of the lowest saliency issues you can get.
Yes.
There's loads of people. No, listen. There's loads of people have a view on it. There's almost nobody will say I will change my vote based on it. Apart from, ironically, those people who will use their vote for more trans rights, not fewer, because it's only trans people and those close to them that think of it as a top saliency issue. So it's not, you will never win an election on a trans policy, ever.
Maybe not trans, but they won it on the EU,
Same
which
with
was
anything
something
else.
that people didn't care about until they were told to care
they
by
did.
the media.
No. They knew it was a big part of their lives. They just didn't think it was anything that politicians needed to do anything about. This is the mass thing, Graham. You're misinterpreting a polling, right? People, when they say it's not an issue, what they mean is it's not an issue for their vote.
Yes.
Right. So, or it's not something
went
they
from
need
like
politicians
2%
to
to 80%.
Yes.
Phil,
yeah.
as being
But
an
because
important issue.
that was always something that you could make because people knew it was a big part of their lives.
Yes.
They do not think trans people are any part of their lives, and they do not think the European Court of Human Rights is any part of their lives.
Okay, so immigration. Is that a
immigration?
big thing?
Yeah.
People are obsessed with it. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what's preventing us from doing all the horrible things that we want to do to immigrants? The European Court of Human Rights.
No, the UN Refugee
So
Convention.
get rid of that. No, that's not. We know that, but that's not the story that Murdoch and Rothermere and the Barclay brother is, because there's only one of them. That's not the story they're going to tell their readers. Their story is going to be: we want to set up a asylum seeker, a processing centre in the Falkland Islands, and we can't because of the European Court of Human Rights.
But that doesn't work. They've been saying that for years.
Why have they gone after trans people? It's because they know that case will end up in the European Court of Human Rights, and they will slap down the Supreme Court in this country. They'll slap down the government, and people go, "Oh, look, this foreign court is telling us what to do."
No,
and you can spin that into political campaigning gold.
That's provably wrong. I'll tell you why. Because it all began in America, and they don't have a European Court of Human Rights. The reason they've gone after trans people is it's really simple. It's the same. It's because it's a small minority group that actually doesn't affect people's lives, and it's just a distraction. There's no greater thinking about it.
You don't think they're doing this to get us out of the European Court of Human Rights?
No, because why? Because America's not in the European Court of Human Rights. They started in America. Yes. The things that's happening, all they did was import the trans hate from America. It's exactly the same in this country. It's not different. It's not for a different purpose. It's all exactly the same. Same people behind it.
I think the end goal, because in America it's 50-50, isn't it? It's one party or the other, where there's lots of parties in the UK, a multi-party system. Although, we still do have first past the post. But like I can't imagine that the horrible Nazi billionaire oligarchs haven't sat down and gone, right, what's our next target? What's the next thing that no one gives a fuck about, but we have to make people give a fuck about to distract them from actually giving a fuck about the fact that we are screwing them over every day of their fucking lives by stealing every penny that they earn to spend on our own luxury yachts and cocaine.
Those same billionaires, Graham, how much of their wealth is tied to what happens politically in America and how much to the UK?
A lot.
The UK is an afterthought.
No, I'm talking about the ones in the UK, the ones who are operating here, who are like, what's our next wheeze? What's our next wizard wheeze?
There aren't any operating here. They're all American.
Why is it then that whenever Farage and Kemi Badenoch seem to be singing from the same hymn sheet, they're talking about
comes from America
pulling out of the European Court of Human Rights?
Because that's just they don't.
Well, they both said it. They both said they've got to do it. Kemi Badenoch said it.
She hasn't. She said the opposite. She said we shouldn't leave.
Was it Generic then?
Generic has.
Generic
has. Even Sunak's saying it these days. But Badenoch has said we shouldn't.
And she's not going to be at last until the next election.
She's not, no. And who knows who it will be at the next one.
It's probably going to be Generic.
There is a risk, but it's not from the source you're saying. The issue with trans people has got absolutely nothing to do with it. That has come from America, and that is not a concern in America.
Okay, well, it's then a happy coincidence that is going to go to the very edifice, the commission, the court.
But that is what it is. It's a coincidence.
The right wing in this country want to get us out of because they want to take away more of our rights.
Yes, that's what they want to do.
So that's a happy coincidence, isn't it?
But they'll never make. There's a fundamental difference between that and the EU. Same with trans issues. They'll never make it an election defining issue because people do not see the impact in their everyday lives. whereas they do of the EU. They recognise that the EU, it doesn't matter whether they understood it, they recognise that the EU sets laws, and those laws are obviously going to govern their everyday life. They do not.
But no one could ever,
the ECHR.
no one could ever list a law that they were looking, an EU
It doesn't
law
matter.
they were looking to get rid of.
Irrelevant. They knew that they set laws. The ECHR doesn't.
Yeah, but the
In fact,
ECHR is overriding our laws.
No, but those laws have been
far as I can
in
tell.
place for like generations.
It doesn't
They
matter.
haven't changed any. It does.
I think
The EU
you're
changed
operating
laws.
at a higher level than most voters. Most voters don't have the time
No,
or
I'm
the
not.
energy or the
Because I
headspace
don't-
to actually think
I
about this
don't-
more than 5 seconds.
I don't imagine how voters behave. I make sure I don't base any of my thinking on how I think voters behave. I base it on how I know they do from polling. I very, very data driven on this.
Do you think that Labour, if they continue on the path that they are taking right now, are going to win the next election?
I think they're going to win the next election, but I do not think they'll win the one after. And I don't think it will even matter because Starmer probably won't try and even go for a third election anyway because he's old, right? I know some people in their 60s will go, no,
desperately
he's not
unpopular.
old. He's old. But also, I think if they carry on doing what they're doing, they will poison the well for whoever takes over.
Keir Starmer's on minus 46 at the moment.
If
he continues on that trajectory, Labour voters are leaving.
yeah, you
like,
can't
hand over
have a
fist.
leader.
There's people in the
have that.
chat. One Angry Pagan's left. Supertansky's left. You've left. Leaving the party.
Yeah, but I left for practical reasons. I don't
Well,
stop supporting them.
You know, do we have membership figures from Labour for the last couple of months? Or
They
they
do
not
actually
publish
publish them. Well, no,
Do
they publish
don't
them
have
each
to,
year.
do they?
They don't have to, but they do.
No.
But they don't. The Conservatives used to, but they stopped a few years ago for some reason.
Well, I'm in a group here in Durham of
Yeah.
people who's Labour activists. It includes Labour councillors, ex-Labour councillors, our own MP is in it, and everyone is freaking out in that group, going, "What the fuck are they doing?" And that's just like Labour voters who might think about voting Labour every 5 years. These are actual activists who have been going out, knocking on people's doors, telling them to vote Labour.
Yeah.
And so now
But those are the ones who will be most pissed off, ironically.
Yes.
But that is also something that Labour should be, more conscious of, because you need your activists to
one
actually go
activist
knocking on doors.
is worth 1,000 voters. Questionable Absanity. Thank you very much for the super chat. There are 13 rights in the ECHR, and only one of them is causing some issues. Article 8. The other 12 are problems for the rich who want to abuse people. True. And thank you very much for the super chat. And also John C. Thank you very much for the super chat. It's very kind of you. And also we have Jasmo66, cool name, who says, "Don't forget, Bojo and Farage were working in the EU prior to referendum and publishing loads of lies about the EU, straight bananas, influx from Turkey, etc., to turn people against the EU." Yes, because they can
Boris
manipulate
Johnson.
people really easily. People want a cartoon villain that they can say, "All of my problems in my life are caused by X. Tell me what X is. Tell me what it is." And if you say, "Oh, well, actually, it's the EU, it's trans people, it's immigrants, it's the European Court of Human Rights," people go along with it because they haven't got time to bother thinking about shit and that. And if Labour...
But you'll never get people to believe that trans people are the cause of all their problems because they don't even know.
That doesn't matter. That is just the Trojan
does matter.
horse. That is the
No,
Trojan
yeah,
horse
yeah,
to
but
get
you will
the
not get them
outcome
believe
that
it.
they want, is to
But they
point
won't.
at the European Court of Human Rights and say, "They've stopped us being mean to trans people."
Yeah, but
And they want immigrants to be able to be
people aren't gonna
treated
vote on that,
rightly.
Graham. People aren't going to vote on that. When they were getting people to vote for the EU, and remember, it was still very marginal that they even managed to get it. They were telling people that they were going to be able to get cheaper clothes and cheaper groceries, stuff like that. And they were specifically told that the reason this will happen is because we'll be able to do trade deals around the whole world that we're currently banned from. So there was a line of thinking there. You tell me the line of thinking from stopping trans people using a toilet to them having an easier time with the cost of living.
It's not just about trans
No,
people.
but you're saying trans
that's,
people, so you've got to do that.
That's grist for the mill. The main thing is going to be about immigrants, about people coming here from other countries, and we can't control it. And why couldn't we control it? Because of the EU. Hardly anyone I spoke to some Lexiteers who were talking about being able to trade with the rest of the world somehow and improve things for cocoa farmers in Ghana, right? Most of the people I spoke to about Brexit face to face. They hated anyone from any other country, and they thought that if we left the EU, we would be able to stop people from coming from other countries. And that same reasoning, that same twisted logic can be used against the European Court of Human Rights, because we can't deport people like we want to,
because we are.
This foreign court is telling us that we can't.
But you're forgetting, Graham, that they won't be able to argue that at the next election.
Why not?
Because Labour are already showing record deportation figures.
Doesn't matter. They want to get rid of all black and brown people in this country. They're racist.
How many people? What percentage
lunatics.
of the population want to do that? What percentage?
52.
It's not 52.
Off the top of my head. How many people voted for refuck?
But not for those reasons. Like, again, great. I cannot say it enough. You've got to look at there's plenty of polling out there that doesn't just say that stop. You're doing what Morgan McSweeney's doing.
Really?
You are Morgan McSweeney.
Oh, God.
You are saying you're looking at something. Ad hominem
attacks now.
I'm sorry,
no,
but you're looking at something. You've got to stop putting an Irish accent now. You're looking at something and you're going, my hypothesis is this, but you're also doing it in a way that assumes that literally everyone is voting for a party for exactly the same reason when they're not.
They're not, absolutely.
But we know
not.
what the reasons people vote for Reform UK are.
It doesn't need to be everyone, Phil. It only
No.
needs to be 32% of the population.
But they're not even that many. It's not even that many. We know from polling. The vast majority, we know this. There's more in common do really
How many people
polling
voted for Brexit? It was 27% of the population, was it?
Yeah, well, that's
don't
irrelevant.
need that many to change this shit.
But 27% didn't vote on the anti-immigration stuff. That was like maybe about 15% of them. The rest of them were voting. No, it wasn't. It was not enough. What put them over the line were the people who were voting for more money for the NHS and for cheaper groceries and cheaper shoes. That's what put it over the line.
It all added up.
No,
every racist in this country voted for Brexit. We know
what
this.
I'm saying to you is that there weren't enough of them to win Brexit. What won it was the cost of living crisis. If there'd been no austerity, there would have been no Brexit. So the same applies here. If at the next election, if Reform UK,
it only won by a slender majority.
Exactly. If there was no austerity, there would have been no Brexit. The thing that put it over the line was not the racists. They would have voted for it any day of the week. It was the people who just wanted their standard of life to increase. And the same thing with the deportations. At the next election, for good or bad, those figures are going to have crashed downwards. Absolutely crashed downwards.
I don't think people care.
Absolutely crashed.
And I'll tell you why I don't think people care is because if you are so minded that you don't like people who are from other countries, and you might say, well, it's only a minority of people who think like that, but they are a very loud, obnoxious minority. And there's we saw how well Refuck did in the local elections. And I tell you now, when these people living in Lincolnshire walk down the street and they see a black face, that's one black face too many. They don't just want to stop people coming into the country. They want to get rid of the people who live here, who were born here, who don't look like them.
You're overestimating the number of people this applies to. Like for the local elections, BBC did a thing. Can't remember where it was now, but in some pub. And there was one fella there saying, and okay, this was just Vox Pops, but this fella actually, we know from polling, represents the majority of people with the anti-immigration views. He said quite openly, that he was happy with immigrants, he was happy with immigration, he just thought it was too high. And that is the case of most people.
Say, Phil.
No,
that's not how they vote.
It is how they vote.
Oh, come on.
Because
66
we know
of
that
the last
from
100 years we've had a Tory government.
Yeah, but they didn't.
This is a conservative country and people lie. You know,
they don't lie to an
James O'Brien
poll.
last week and was like, I'm driving and all these drivers are really rude. All these foreigners are really rude. And James O'Brien goes, how do you know the foreigners? And then the guy's in a bind because he wants to say because they're brown, but he can't. So he goes, you just know, don't you? You just know.
Most people aren't that. Most people aren't that person. You're trying to
I agree. I agree it's a minority. But you've got a number of factors coming together, and I don't think that leaving the ECHR is going to be the be all and end all for the Refuck campaign of 2029.
Not going to be anyone. You cannot sell it to anyone.
It is a major factor in what they plan to do and what they plan to sell to the British public.
But
you're saying Labour are going to get ahead of the economy, they're going to get ahead on immigration even. But Labour,
Yes.
if we don't leave the ECHR, that gives them an opportunity, gives Refuck an opportunity to say, aha, they won't do this thing that we will do. And so,
Yeah.
as much
But
aping of Refuck and doing all the policies that Refuck would like them to do, like being horrible to trans people, being horrible to immigrants for no good reason, it's going to be immaterial because they're like, we're going to offer something different to Labour.
Graham, you're unfortunately, to someone who looks at the polling on this all the time, you're amplifying the number of people who are just against all immigration, and you are insufficiently factoring in the people who just got scared by those 2023 figures. Those figures that were published in 2023 that were actually 2022's figures, million net migration, that scared the shit out of people. So when people are saying today that net migration, that we're fine with immigration, but net migration is too high, they're thinking about that news report 2 years ago.
Okay.
So once Labour say we've got net migration down to like 70%, we've knocked it down by 70%, all of those people will all of a sudden, they're not anti-immigration. They just thought it was out of control.
Okay, but you've got the ones who are hardcore, the Tories aren't Tory enough, go off to Refuck. Well, you're saying a tiny number. How did Refuck do so well in those elections? They overcame a 15,000 majority in Runcorn.
They weren't voted for by people that are anti-immigration. You're just thinking they are.
Hang on,
because they're an anti-immigration party.
Well, they are, but it was in concert with Labour being absolutely shite. And so a lot of Labour voters just didn't turn out. Yeah. They stayed at home.
Yeah,
so when you've got a lot of activated Refuck voters who are going out putting Refuck flags up on the flag poles, you know what I mean? Like they're the ones who are like, oh shit, we've got to get everyone voting Reform. Whereas Labour's lost a load of its activists, a load of its supporters, a load of its members because of the way it's going. I don't think that the 2029 election will necessarily be won by the Conservatives or by Refuck. I think that Labour's going to lose it though.
You keep making arguments based on the idea that all Reform UK voters are anti-immigration.
No.
Do you know what?
Just enough of them, Phil. I never said all.
It doesn't matter.
You're making a straw man here. I never said all of them.
It's not even a majority.
A majority of them are racist. I'm just going to put those cards on the table now.
They're not even anti-immigration. You're assuming.
Well, the polls on their attitudes beg to differ.
No, they don't. The polls on the attitude say that they are actually not even anti-immigration, let alone anti-racist. There's a core of them who are, all of their activists are, but the actual voters are not.
Okay, we need to drill down into, have you got the polls in front of you for Refuck voters and how racist they are?
Not right now, no.
Brad's saying, guys, get a room. This is our room. We're having the debate. What do you want? It's a politics channel.
But they're
boring if we agreed on everything.
They're mostly voting for Reform UK because, and this is Reform UK's main thing. The Reform UK's main pitch to the public is not immigration policy or net zero, anything like that. Their main pitch to the public is that both the Conservatives and Labour have failed. And why keep voting for parties that have failed? That's their pitch. That is it. That is their entire basis for having grown to the size they are now. Yes. That pitch that both the Conservatives and Labour have failed, it's got nothing to do with immigration. It's got nothing to do with energy policy. It's got nothing to do with any policy. It's entirely about, so all Labour have to do is, and this is why I think they will win the next election, but I worry about the election afterwards, because then they'll fall back again. Because even if Labour succeed in everything they're trying to do over the next decade, then come the following election, people go, okay, so what are you going to do next? And they'll announce some things. And people go, well, that doesn't sound all that ambitious, because they'll have fixed the basics. And that's exactly what happens in a democracy. You know, no one stays in the odd country where it's the system sort of maybe makes it more stable. But in most countries, particularly the first past the post, that's not going to happen. There comes a point where even if you've done well, people then start to see diminishing returns on what you're achieving. You end up with more low impact policies because the high impact stuff's done. So everything's now low impact. And you lose the election because you look like you run out of ideas. And that next election, if we retain our current system, this is why everyone who doesn't like the current state of politics should be in favour of proportional, well, electoral reform, should we say. If we don't
Farage
have
is in
electoral
charge
reform,
in favor of electoral reform, isn't he?
so he says.
Until he gets into number 10, and then he won't be anymore.
But the point is that if we keep our current system, Labour are going to lose power, and it is. I don't see them being a 3-term government, so they're going to lose power. It doesn't actually matter when it is. It could be 2.
I genuinely
even if it is
can
3
see them
terms,
being
it's
a
irrelevant.
one-term government.
No, but it doesn't matter. We don't.
Here's a question for you.
Irrelevant.
You say that there's not that many people who vote refuck who are racist, which I disagree with. I think most of them are, but like whatever, we can disagree about that. But like that's their core, you know. Imagine if they did something that really pissed off all the racists in the party. They said something or did something, and all the racists were like, "Oh, I can't vote for this man anymore. He's destroyed everything I care about." That's what Labour's done to its progressives.
Well, I wouldn't make that argument because Farage has done that repeatedly.
What,
he's pissed off the racists in his party repeatedly. He said Tommy Robinson's a dickhead.
Yeah.
He said his party's not a racist party. He's appointed a Muslim gentleman, a Muslim Scot, to be chair of the party and joint owner of the party.
Yep.
Joint owner. Farage can't even sack him.
What a great way to prove you're not racist, by putting people who... I'm not racist, but...
Are you going to say that all those they've infuriated the racists in Reform UK? They absolutely infuriated them. And just to add spice to it, so there was a lot of argy-bargy with various people who'd been the local representatives of Reform UK being sacked by the Central Party, which is basically Zia Yusuf. So this Muslim Scottish gentleman has also been kicking out some of the Ed bangers and installing people he thought was a bit more professional. So in actual fact, Reform UK have been repeatedly pissing off their racists. Doesn't seem to have done their polling any harm.
Yeah.
Well, we've got that many racists.
We've got some comments coming in. Some super chats. Even better. Even better. I just decided to scroll up, didn't I? John C says, "Oh, Phil, there are many of us who are currently not close to trans people who see the injustice, the danger, and are disgusted by the cynical anti-trans political manoeuvring and anti-trans messaging." And I absolutely agree, John C. I think that this is a big mistake for Labour. What you've said before is that people don't vote to make trans people's lives a misery, but they will definitely vote against people who make trans people's lives
a small number will. Even most of the ones who think, like myself, I will vote Labour at the next election because the alternative is Conservative stroke Reform, who will shit on trans people even more and shit on everyone else as well.
The lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. What a great system. We've got Amy, Zantisukun Amy. Thank you very much for the £5 super chat. Phil, how do you think Labour will react to being slapped down by the ECHR over trans rights?
It depends when it is. If it was to happen quite soon, I suspect very badly. I'm hoping that it happens after Labour have collectively realised that when you do stuff that you don't really believe in to get favourable polling, and the polling goes through the floor and to the point where it's nearly in Australia, that maybe, just maybe, you'll change your attitude.
Well, this is what I said to my MP. I said, look, this is the route map. You know, going into trans rights, take it to the EC, let Good Law Project do your work for you, let them spend the money, taking it to the European Court of Human Rights. And then they'll slap it down, and then they can say, "Oh, look, it's a foreign court interpreting our laws. Labour need to get ahead of this. They need to amend the Equality Act of 2010, something they can do themselves. And if they don't do that, then they don't deserve my vote in the next election. Quite frankly." We've also got SG. Thank you very much for the super chat. When an asylum application is rejected, many appeals are based on the ECHR right to family life. It will get twisted to get out of the ECHR.
That's fine. Labour, bear in mind, Labour have got to improve their communications by then. They'll just come out with some examples of bollocks.
It's not just about communications anymore.
Because you know how they were trying to do that, that chicken nuggets thing that happened?
What?
They tried.
Chicken nuggets? What?
So they tried to claim that someone who was being deported was allowed to stay because their kid likes chicken nuggets. And then they've been deported anyway. So you just come up with things like that. Just say, actually, it's a load of bollocks, though.
Well,
But in order to do that, you
refuting
have to be able
bullshit
to.
takes a lot, and orders of magnitude longer than just saying the bollocks in the first place. Chris C, thank you very much for the £2 super chat. The Brexit vote was about getting Cameron out. Well, he'd been elected the year before, so I don't think it was.
Some people, though,
entirely
know
about that.
it is
The Lexity vote, maybe.
No. We know from polling, again, this is austerity. There were some people who voted for Brexit. We know from the after referendum polling, there were a significant number. It's not that huge number. It was in the couple of percent of people voted for Brexit just to stick two fingers up at David Cameron because he was campaigning for Remain.
Yeah, I know.
So actually, the number of people, because there were lots of factors in there, like the number of people who voted specifically to stick two fingers up at Cameron and had no other view on the subject at all. If they hadn't, that actually still would have. It was enough of them that Brexit still wouldn't have happened. It was a significant number of people.
Yeah. Well, it was one of the biggest policy communications disasters of the 20th century, wasn't it? With
putting David Cameron, Jeremy Corbyn, in charge of a pro-EU campaign.
Yeah,
it's absolute madness.
Two people who have spent most of their lives moaning about the EU. Kate, I give it a solid 7 out of 10, mate. Kate Sai, thank you very much for the £2 super chat. For next week, how about a dive into the data? Yeah, Phil, got some homework for you.
I will bring some.
And then Chris H, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. Totally agree with Graham that Labour is a one-time government unless Starmer goes soon and not at the last minute like Biden.
No, that would be a disaster. And various people say, "Oh, I love it." So I noticed someone say, "Love it if Angela Rayner became PM." She'd be a disaster. Nothing against her personally. She's too divisive.
Yeah. I don't necessarily think that they need to get rid of Starmer. I think, my attitude towards this is shifting, I've got to say. But
he needs to get rid of those advisors. The thing is, you get someone else in, if they have the same advisors, you don't get rid of the problem. You actually just make it worse, because when you get rid of a leader, it's an admission that the party was on the wrong tracks.
Yes.
So there's a huge political cost
to changing leader. There's a bunch of policy U-turns that they need to make. And is this? I've heard some people say that Starmer's playing a long game, and as soon as he said that, I was like, "Oh my god, that's what they used to say about Corbyn." He's go, "Oh, he's playing a long game, mate. You just don't understand. He's playing 4D chess," and I'm like, "What the hell is wrong with him?"
So
he's obviously.
What I would say is, some of the is clearly a long game, and we know he plays a long game because he has already done that in the past. This is not a long game, and we know it's not a long game because it's reactive. They aren't making these announcements. These are changes to their position from just last year. They're actually changes to stated positions from just last year. So we know that this is new. It is not part of a long game. It is a knee-jerk reaction that has actually just ended up kicking the doctor in the balls. That is what's happened. So it's because I literally their recent announcements have been designed to try and get a message through to the public that is obvious, because what they've announced is not that impactful on most people's lives. It's not something they expect people to notice. So it's all about the messaging, and the messaging has resulted in an immediate collapse of the polls.
Yeah.
That's what they should be having. That's what Labour MPs, if the cabinet won't do it, Labour MPs need to go to the whips and say, this is, they need to say to them, this is clearly not a long game. Yeah. This is clearly not a long game because it's reactive. It's having the opposite effect. This isn't like a policy, like there are some policies where there's an initial cost to it and you pay out a few years later. And okay, you take the hit there because by the election you'll get the payout. There is no payouts to any of these announcements. They're not announcing anything that has a payout. The announcement is the payout. And the payout is, you're even more unpopular now.
I know. I've got to imagine that some of these advisors are actually working for the Tories, which is how I felt, during the anti-Brexit campaign. The people at the vote, what they call the People's Vote, there were Tories in there. There were Brexiteers in there. I have no doubt about that. And it's not me being like old and bitter and we didn't win. It's all their fault.
We know from
there were a lot of different factors, and it was a really, really amateurish outfit. And we were going up against the world's oligarchs and the fucking Kremlin and what they wanted. But yeah, there were people in there that had no interest in us staying in the EU, and they just went in there to make meetings go on for 7 hours longer than it needed to, and make everyone just feel, devalued. And
we know that for a fact because one of them admitted to it. Will Dry.
Yeah. It's crazy. John C, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. Many do not realise that the ECHR umbrella and derived legislation protects the welfare and quality of life of their vulnerable elderly relatives. Yep, you're absolutely right. But then people didn't realise that the EU did a bunch of stuff for them in their everyday life that they didn't really realise that the EU was doing for them, i.e. farming subsidies through the Common Agricultural Policy, and also allowing fishermen around this country to sell their fucking fish to Europe, no questions asked. We decided not to let them do that anymore, and now they can't sell it to anyone. HK, thank you very much for £10 super chat. Next week, Beatles versus Stones. Well, you know what I stand on that, don't you? Because I'm from Liverpool, I have to. What's your position?
I'm not really a big fan of music, so I don't really care for either of them. I mean, they've both got some songs that are all right and some that are terrible. I mean, they were both drugged half the time, so...
The Beatles were a force to be reckoned with.
Sometimes it's like listening to Donald Trump. So
what? The Rolling Stones like listening to Donald Trump?
Well, sometimes some of their stuff.
My God.
But I'm not a huge fan of music. There's no point in getting me to debate anything on music.
Okay.
Don't really know.
Fair enough. Liam says, best channel on YouTube. I love it when you both debate. Keep it real and valuable. Thank you, Liam. I'm glad someone appreciates this. For people in the chat like, shut up, you two. Get a fucking room.
That's why I had to turn down those free Oasis tickets.
Chris C, I understand where Phil is coming from, but I fear that Starmer will be as bad regardless of his advisors. He has shown he is happy to break promises and pledges if it benefits him. And I've got to say...
It does not benefit him, though.
That putting together of the juxtaposition of him in 2020 when he was running for leader, saying that he wanted to respect the rights of immigrants and he'll never do anything to undermine and demonize immigrants. And then they played the Rivers of Blood, the Island of Strangers speech from Monday. And it's just like, is that even the same person?
Well, no, this is what I mean. I mean, Labour are currently doing things that they know are wrong. They think they're doing it strategically, but it's not working. And this isn't something where you get to say the payout will be later. It's not. These announcements are intended to get an immediate reaction. Well, they have got an immediate reaction. It's a negative one. Yeah. And someone needs to actually, I mean, Starmer himself really needs to, but someone needs to say this is bullshit. We need to stop. You've basically employed snake oil salesmen to advise you in number 10, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. We got another super chat come in from Resloy812. Graham is right, Phil is wrong. Sorry, mate. The Reform Party are coming like a marauding tiger. Nearly everyone at my workplace love Reform and Farage. They can win.
They can, just not at the next election.
I think it's going to be squeaky bum time, especially if Jenrick gets in as the Tory leader and they do a deal.
Well, he will destroy the Conservatives. I mean, obviously, yes, it would be better if the Conservatives could be a bit better themselves, because, yeah, we could actually do with the Conservatives being better to squeeze Reform's vote as well.
We're getting arguments in the chat about the Beatles and the Stones as well, and Queen,
See what you start.
which I don't think Queen's relevant because Queen were later on, so they were
superior.
You're not comparing apples with apples here. The Beatles and the Stones, big bands of the 1960s, but the Beatles definitely had the edge. They were only around for 8 years and they put together 12 amazing albums. Still resonate today.
What did I do? I invoked the Beatles yesterday. What did I do? Oh yeah, I described Zia Yusuf as Reform UK's Yoko.
It's a bit harsh.
But that's how a lot of Reform UK supporters see him. A lot of the activists see him.
I know that
Farage has done all these unpopular things. He's like attacking Tommy Robinson. He's attacking poor Rupert Lowe.
Yeah.
And he's insisting the party aren't racist. They go, what the hell? And they'll just see this as actually Zia Yusuf's influence, I think.
The best joke in the film Yesterday, where the guy wakes up and the Beatles never existed, and he's the only person in the world who remembers the Beatles. He Googles Beatles and nothing comes up, and then he types in Oasis and nothing comes up, and he's like, yeah, figures. Because obviously they ripped all their songs off the Beatles. Yeah. But yes, what about Supertramp, says Super Tiny? Yeah, I think Supertramp should win. I think Shawaddy Waddy should win in this debate anyway. Deep Purple, Roy Harper. Queen, Pink Floyd. You spelled Pink Floyd wrong, says Liam. And we've got something in Starmer's defence. So here we go. We got Pete in the chat. He says, Powell said that the UK will become an island of strangers, but Starmer said that we shouldn't let it become an island of stranger, meaning let's not treat immigrants as enemies.
So my argument there is, but they did sort of say, no, they did say that. But what I would say is, if you make like a political speech, particularly when you want it to be widely reported on, you make a speech, probably not even Starmer's written it, someone's written it, other people have looked at it, he's looked at it, changes have been made, you've redrafted it. So every single word in it is carefully crafted. So if you make this speech and there's a line in it, which is going to be a soundbite, it's there as any sort of allusion like that is an intended soundbite. If you have to, and over the next few days, Labour were furiously trying to explain what they meant. If you have to spend the next 3 days trying to explain what you actually meant, you did a shit job in the first place, is all I would say.
Yeah, that's very true.
Because politicians should know how that every word will be interpreted.
Yeah. Saying what you meant comes into this with FT Griffin, £2 super chat, who says, Starmer will say anything to stay in power.
Good.
I wish he would. I wish he would say the things that would keep him in power. To be honest with you, FT Griffin,
are supposed to do.
Yeah, and he's saying the things that are literally going to get him yeeted from power.
That's literally like complaining at a doctor. That's literally like complaining at a doctor. Oh, they'll prescribe any treatment just to heal the patient. It's like, good. The problem is that this particular doctor has decided to treat a headache by decapitation.
I love the fact that everyone's now arguing about music in the chat rather than what we're discussing.
I did not start this.
Totally derailed the conversation. Anyway, so we'll probably leave it at that. Thanks very much, Phil, for joining us on the agenda, where we get to talk about what's happening down in the UK. There's probably shitloads of stuff that's happened this week that we haven't even covered, but it's just nice to be able to talk about domestic politics for a change and not have to mention the Orange Menace from over the water, who he's like whack-a-mole in it. Like every day he wants to be in the news. He wants someone to be talking about it.
He does, but that's something that Starmer should learn from. Donald Trump captures the news. He forces the news to talk about things he wants them to talk about. He can't, although he is doing his best to control also how they report it. But it doesn't matter how they report it. The fact is they're talking about what you want them to talk about.
Yeah.
And that's what Starmer should do. And there are easy ways for him to do it. There are easy things he could do to just make the media report, because they're desperate. Political journalists, that's why they turn up. They'll turn up to a press conference. Why do you think they turn up to a press conference? Because otherwise they've got to think of their own bloody article to write.
So Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, she has an 81% approval rating, Phil. 81%. 81%. The people polled said they approve of her. Only between 11 and 15.
That is unusually high, though.
That is mad high. Do you know what she does, though? Every morning, fucking press conference. Yeah. Every morning. This is what the Labour lot should be doing. Starmer should be doing a press conference.
I used the American example. I said he needs to get an Oval Office, like not looking like, but he can't have like a Downing Street office. They have to tart it up. It looks shit. But I said that's what he should do. He needs to get them in each day. No. Have it more informal.
Get ahead of the agenda every day.
But not at the lectern. Just to have a desk, like actually have a room which has a desk or an armchair. Yeah. Just sit him around on sofas. One thing Humza Yousaf did really well when he took over at the SNP, I thought that was a really good move. It was unfortunately downhill from there. Is he just got a load of journalists and he got some comfy chairs and he just sat with them and talked to them. Just do that. Talk excitedly about the things you want to talk about, the stuff that's popular. Like this morning, instead of being a dickhead, in Albania, what he could have done is he could have got them round. They only built that blue room in Downing Street anyway because it was built by a Russian company.
Yes, it was for millions and millions of taxpayers' pounds. Yeah.
So they just tear that down, get some nice comfy chairs and sofas in, and just sit around with a table, some coffee, and he could have been talking today about, so the economic figures were better than you all reporting, you bastards. Let me explain why that was. so that you don't make an arse of yourselves next time. And we've got this policy and this policy and this policy, and the NHS is doing really well. Then he could have gone on to say, oh, and by the way, we're not having any of this nonsense from Thames Water. They want to use that emergency loan to pay their executive bonus. Steve Reed's told him where to go on that one. Steve Reed is blocking that bonus thanks to the new law we passed in February.
But they could be doing this and getting ahead of the news agenda every morning, 9 o'clock. They go on and you can be sitting there. Sometimes he's joined with another minister. Sometimes he's joined with, whoever. And they just talk about what's going on. That's what they do in Mexico. And it's not the only reason why she's got an 81% approval rating, but it's the highest in the world. And it would help. But comms and policy at the moment.
And that's something they could easily do. Yeah. You don't have to. We know Starmer's. You can't say he needs to be more charismatic because obviously you can't be who you're not. But so it wouldn't require that. It just requires him to talk about the things that they should want to talk about. And the media he cannot control how they report on it. They're not, the Daily Express isn't going to have the headline the next day, Starmer is right, we are dickheads. But they will report on the topics he brought up. Because all these top political journalists have gone there to listen to him. They're not going to then go away and write about something else. So they'll write about whatever he decided to bring up.
Yeah. We got a great comment from Hammy Walker. I've not heard this one for Trump before. Pumpkin spice Palpatine. Oh, that's going to keep me laughing for a long time. What else? People just make me laugh now. Alan Parsons Project. We had a couple of super chats come in at the end there. We got Ori. Thank you very much for the £10 super chat. Just throwing a few pennies in. That's more than a few pennies. Thank you very much, Ori. That's very kind of you. I would like to add a few comments, but I'm thoroughly burnt out with all the madness coming out of the UK. But I'm following it, though, because it's better to stay informed. But, oh, my God. Yep. Don't blame you. Do not blame you for feeling
There's
like
a
that.
lot like that, unfortunately. There's a lot of people who have decided to turn off politics altogether, which is the views are so much harder these days. Thank you very much.
And then we've got SG. Thank you very much for the £5 super chat. I really love both of you. Please never stop being you. Oh, thank you, SG. You never stop being you either. That's really kind of you.
I'm not immortal.
And then finally, Questionable Life Sanity. Thank you very much for the super chat. Chaise long and he can sit like biggest dickus.
Yes. Yes, that's it. And a little table with a bowl of grapes there.
No, bowl of grapes.
Next question, please.
Fed them by beautiful, scantily clad maidens.
Or like... there was that scene. There was that. It was always I can never get this out of my head after I found out about it as well. You got this scene in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the TV version, where you've got like the reason why they designed the planets for people who are extremely wealthy but really bored. And they got this thing, and he gets a grape out, and a concubine rubs it on her breast.
Kisses,
and stuff like that.
She kisses the grape.
Yeah, gives it to her, and he gives it to a dog. And later on, I learnt that grapes are poisonous to dogs. And I'm thinking, did the BBC kill a dog just to shoot that scene?
Maybe. Dogs aren't supposed to be around chocolate either.
No. In fact, for the last 2 years, ours have got into the chocolate Easter eggs. Not my fault. They were left there by, last year my wife and this year my stepdaughter. Fortunately, there was such a small amount that it was all right.
That's why if a strange man comes to your neighbourhood with a van full of chocolates and puppies, you shouldn't get in the back of the van.
No, you shouldn't.
That's the only reason. Right, okay, we're going to leave it at that. I'll be back at 9:30 tonight with the Friday Night Social. Big thank you to Phil for being on the show today and giving us a good old debate there. That was good. And also thank you to everyone watching. Thanks for all the chat. Thanks for all the super chats, especially. Give us a like on the way out if you are so minded. It really, really helps out the channel. And if you're not subscribed, there's a good third of people watching this who are not subscribed to the channel. Please just subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. Just give us a subscription and it helps our algorithms. So until next time, I'll just say thanks for watching. Hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.